and welcome to the first spring session of Careers Beyond Academia, hosted by Stem Cell Network and Medicine by Design. And my name is Ellie Arnold, and I'm the training coordinator at Stem Cell Network. It's our goal with this series to expose as many trainees as possible to different job roles available after a degree in the life sciences, and to start to understand the qualifications and the experience that might be necessary to secure those roles. So Stem Cell Network and Medicine by Design have teamed up to host this series, which has already highlighted a wide variety of careers available after a degree in the life sciences. And you can see past Beyond Academia recordings on Stem Cell Network's YouTube. And we have new sessions coming up in February and March, so keep an eye out for those as well. And we also have other training events occurring monthly, both at Stem Cell Network and at Medicine by Design. So check out our websites and social media for the many out there opportunities that we offer throughout the year, including workshops, seminars, and symposiums. And don't forget to sign up for our newsletters to be notified of upcoming opportunities. And you can find those links to sign up on our website. So we have two speakers today, Helen Luck and Ryan Mitchell, and I'd like to go ahead now and introduce our first speaker, who will be Helen Luck from Shift Health. Dr. Luck is a senior consultant at Shift Health, which is a strategy consultancy focused on the health research and innovation ecosystem. And she's led the development of research, innovation, and project strategies across diverse organizations in Canada, Europe, US, and the Middle East, and beyond. And then prior to joining Shift Health in 2019, Helen earned a PhD in immunology at the University of Toronto. So please go ahead and get us started, Helen.
Great, thanks, Ellie, and thank you to Stem Cell Network and Medicine by Design for inviting me to speak today. So I see about now over 40 people that have joined today, so it's great to have such a great turnout. Unfortunately, I won't be able to see the faces, but looking forward to answering your questions today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and Ellie, if I could just double check with you that it looks okay.
Yep, that looks good.
Perfect, thank you. So hello everyone, my name is Helen Luck. I am a strategy consultant, and today I'm looking forward to speaking with you about my career path to date, and specifically how I kind of navigated beyond academia and into consulting. So in terms of my current position, I'm a senior consultant at a company called Shift Health that's based out of Toronto. Our office actually is in the Yorkville area, if you are from Toronto. And prior to that, I did complete my PhD in immunology at the University of Toronto. So a bit about my career path here. So I did my undergrad also at the University of Toronto in life sciences before I transitioned into my PhD. During my PhD here, I just wanted to highlight some of the other kind of activities, extracurriculars that I took part of, as I think this is also a really important part for any graduate student to explore and really diversify their resume. So I did a bit of a teaching assistant in the Department of Human Biology. I was a part of the Graduate Students Association for my department. I also did a short term in the Entrepreneurship Hatchery, which is an incubator, part of the Faculty of Engineering at U of T as well, and I was their business strategy lead. A big part of my graduate time was also spent with the University Consulting Group, which is a nonprofit organization that provides pro bono consulting services to other nonprofits. And it's a great group. I highly recommend for you to check it out. And then also some other things I did was a design for the departmental student magazine called Impress Magazine, and then participated in some other events as well. So networking, mentorship, and especially for consulting, case competitions as well. And I'll get into a bit more details about these things throughout my talk today. So that was during my PhD studies, and then I applied to be an intern at the company that I am currently at, Shift Health, in 2019, before I was signed on to be a consultant for a year or two, and then I transitioned into a senior consultant role in 2020. And so in total, I've been with the company for about 4 years now, since January. So just a little bit about Shift Health and what we do. So Shift Health really brings a science mindset to strategy consulting. for the health research and innovation ecosystem. When I mention a science mindset, that means that all of our consultants do have a life science background. That's a part of a research-based graduate degree. And so that's what we kind of pride ourselves on, bringing that science mindset to consulting. We work with all different parts of the sector, so from government, academia, industry, not-for-profits, healthcare providers, and patient partners from Canada and also around the world. We hope that we're helping to create the future of healthcare. And then I just provided some stats below on our experience. So diving into a bit more on what is management or strategy consulting. This is a quick glance. So the typical background for someone in consulting is very mixed. Really depends on the company and the firm that you're interested in. There's more general ones that kind of span across all different industries. It could be finance, it could be retail, sciences, etc. And then there are more specific focused companies as well. So for example, Shift Health, that's only focused within the healthcare life science space. So for Shift Health, we do require our consultants to have a research-based graduate degree, so whether that's a PhD or master's in the life sciences. But again, this would vary depending on the company that you're interested in. A potential salary range for entry-level consultant can vary, ranges anywhere from 80 to 100K plus, the total compensation, so that includes other things as well. And then what I do in a sentence, this was really hard for me to kind of drill down into one sentence. And this, I'm sure if you ask different people, they'll provide different versions of this. But really it's for consultants, for me, is to provide an evidence-based strategic guidance to support leaders in solving complex business challenges to reach their organization goals. A lot of times we are also there in helping them to identify and prioritize what those organizational goals might be as well. But in addition to that, there might be other associated business challenges that we help them with. Some key skills that are critical to, at least for Shift Health and similar consulting firms, would be an advanced knowledge of science, healthcare, or the life sciences. Of course, this is more for those firms that are focused in the healthcare space. Primary and secondary research and data analysis skills. The skill, and I think a lot of graduate students do kind of have this, is to be able to handle ambiguity, especially, when you're not sure which research direction you're taking or where your research is going. You have to test, come up with new hypotheses, test those, and etc. So handling ambiguity is really important. Attention to detail is also very important. And of course, ability to work in a fast-paced environment. So consulting is a very fast-paced environment. Projects typically are about 6 to 9 months long, and you have to really ramp up with knowledge building and gathering data, research, and all of that very quickly. So it does require you to be able to work quickly and be agile as well. And then of course, written and verbal communications. We do a lot of work in PowerPoint, in addition to Word and Excel, but a lot of work in PowerPoint. So having that visual eye and being able to make some nice PowerPoint slides is critical as well. Other careers I considered, I narrowed this down into consulting pretty early on in my journey throughout grad school. But for me, the struggle or contemplation was really between, do I want to stay within the life sciences or be more general? Because there are firms that hire life science graduate students to tackle problems outside of the sciences as well. So looking at more generalist firms, and then whether I wanted to be in strategy or operations within consulting, I ultimately landed on strategy, but there are also a lot of firms that do more implementation and downstream from strategy. Some typical activities. So here I laid out what a consultant would do, and then a senior consultant, because I wanted to kind of show you what a job out of graduate school would entail, and then progress from there. So a consultant, as I mentioned, a big part of it is research. So gathering, mining, interpreting research from different secondary sources. So that could be a literature, that could be just online web searches on organizations. That could be reports, data reports, more specific data related outputs as well. The second part of that research is primary research. So leading the development of question guides where we're interviewing experts in the field to get their perspectives on a specific field of expertise within the sciences, within R&D development. There's a big variety of the types of experts and key opinion leaders that we speak with. And then, consultants will also sometimes help with leading those consultations and those interviews as well. And then, downstream from that research is the analysis, so generating insights, both quantitative and qualitative, bringing together the team to kind of understand what are the insights that you've gathered, what are the kind of the main, synthesized details from that, and then developing the client deliverable. And then, of course, a big part of consulting is you always work within a team. So you do have to collaborate with your project team members to review, revise, and address any comments on deliverables as well. From a senior consultant perspective, so progressing from a consultant, you take on more project management responsibilities. So I'm very much responsible for coordinating the team from a day-to-day perspective, making sure we're all aligned on what the tasks are to be done for the project, meeting timelines and budgets. I'm also the primary contact for a lot of clients as well for these projects, and I serve as leading the calls for when we're presenting the deliverables and stuff like that, and along with senior team members. And then I support the consultants in doing that research, interpreting that research. And then there's also additional responsibilities in helping with business development and internal processes as well. So recruiting, hiring, attending events like these and informational interviews. Okay, so as a quick example, I just wanted to provide 2 examples of projects that I've been in to give you a flavor of what a consulting project is like. So one here I put a corporate strategy, and the second I put a product strategy. So for example, a corporate strategy here was, and these are both projects that I've been on, is a large community hospital is looking to establish a new research institute that's focused on population health and health equity research, and they're looking for how are they going to go about doing this? What is their vision? What is their mission? What are their kind of research priorities going to be? And so we kind of came in and examined what are the kind of institutes across the world that are have a similar mandate generally, understand best practices, speak to their stakeholders, identify what kind of opportunities there are in this space, and what kind of research is important to the community that they serve. And so we've helped them develop a strategy, of bold vision, mission, governance, structure, research priorities, and outline some impact that they'll have moving forward. A second one is more with R&D and product strategy. So we helped a global pharmaceutical company look to maximize their commercial impact for a late stage vaccine, and looking for them to really stand out amongst their competitors. So we did a lot of primary, secondary research, understand where their competitors are standing and how they can position themselves better, and how they should position themselves amongst their competitors to gain market share. And so our output helped to provide regional specific insights, inform competitive positioning, and maximize their impact. Great, so why my role is important. So here we're just highlighting some opportunities and challenges that I have within my role. As I mentioned, I'm very much responsible for the day-to-day execution of our project and making sure they meet timelines, budgets, and expectations. Beyond that, it's really about providing objective insights, that is evidence-based, coming in with a third-party perspective to clients to help define and achieve their business objectives. Why I enjoy my role. This is an interesting one. So I what's great is you can really continue to apply your scientific background and research skills that you've honed in your graduate degree on a daily basis. You get to learn a lot about new scientific areas, stay at the leading edge for innovation and trends. You get to, come up with new and creative solutions for your clients. One of the biggest things was more of that instantaneous satisfaction, gratification. I think throughout my PhD, I very much focused on a project for a very long time. And for me, I wanted to have, be more milestone driven. And so coming into consulting, that was great because the projects are much shorter and they're milestone driven. And then also the overarching idea that I'm helping to shape the future of healthcare, health research and innovation. Some of the challenges, projects can be ambiguous at first and you will need to pivot. It is a client-facing role and type of job. So you do have to sometimes abide by or, work with client timelines and budgets. And you'll also be kind of at an arm's length because you are that third party. So from, clients implementing your recommendations as well. Future career trajectory and opportunities. The greatest thing, or one of the major perks to consulting, is that it is open. It does open many doors to different industries because you do get that diverse client and project exposure and experience. I think I just have 2 more slides here. Ali, am I okay for time?
Oh, yeah, you're doing well. If maybe wrap up in the next 1 to 2 minutes.
Okay, sure. So I just wanted to provide, this is more of a general career planning advice. This is a lot that I wish, I knew earlier when I was thinking about my career choices as well. And so this is not just about consulting. I think it's just more general advice as well. I put some examples for consulting as well. The first thing for me is really to understand your values. I put some kind of questions that I would ask myself or anyone that I'm speaking to in an informational interview. It's, what type of work output and impact is the most rewarding for me? What type of lifestyle do I want to have over the next 5 years? So consulting is very intense and time intensive, and it's many hours a week, 50 plus, depending on the firm that you work for. So you do have to think about, work-life balance. What is that work-life balance that you want to have? What work culture do I thrive in? Is it, more in a team-based environment? Is it more in, you prefer working solo, but then sometimes you can report back to a bigger team, things like that. Work culture, there's a very, very different work culture between working for large consulting firms or any kind of corporate, large corporate setting versus smaller settings. So for example, Shift Health is more of in that shorter, smaller setting where, everyone knows each other very well. And so just think about that as well. It's important. Do I prefer a specific geographical location or am I flexible? Of course, there are options beyond, Toronto or outside of Toronto, across the province, across the country, or beyond Canada as well. So really thinking about, are you flexible to work? I know the hybrid environment provides a bit more flexibility now, but there's still, considerations when you do have to go into office occasionally. And whether you're willing to travel for work, consulting, a lot of consulting includes travel. At Shift Health, we travel to deliver versus other firms, they are very much integrated into the client's day-to-day. So that's something to think about. And then how critical is rapid career progression for me? Another thing to consider is really look at doing your research. There are so many resources out there, tons of YouTube videos, blogs and things like that about specific career paths these days, what a day today looks like. Just kind of learn more about it, see if it's suitable for you. For consulting specifically, learn the case interview process. A lot of firms use this case interview process, and it really takes practice to get good at it. And then find peers that are willing to kind of practice either cases or interviews with you. And it's just good to talk to people with similar interests. Diversify your resume. I've already spoken to that. Make a good LinkedIn profile. sometimes it surprises me that, when I speak to, junior lab mates to me that said like, oh, I've been really meaning to make a LinkedIn profile, but I haven't yet. LinkedIn is probably one of the must-dos these days, just to even get a sense for job postings, see what's out there, and then you can connect with people, showcase your professional achievements there as well. Practice trial and error. It's really about, if you're interested in consulting, for example, but you're not sure, give it a try, and that there's a lot of opportunities, whether that's with UCG, GMCA, things like that, to just get a sense for what it's like doing a case competition and seeing if it, even piques your interest. If not, just move on. It's trial and error. One thing I want to stress lastly is really developing your communication skills. It's becoming, more and more important for me as well, and I'm still working on this to become a better communicator. The actual content of what you say is only contributes to about 10% of your impact of the communication that you provide. It's about the nonverbal, how you say it, and the vocal communication, and your body language and things like that, that contributes to the 90% of the impact of your communication. So being a good communicator is critical as well. And these are just my closing thoughts. One thing I'm just going to emphasize here is there's no one way to getting to your success. No, you don't have to mirror exactly what someone else has done or anything like that. There's more than one way to getting to where you want to be, and so there's no gold standard. Just try it out, see what works for you, and if it doesn't work, you just pivot. It's totally normal. Your first job will likely and may not be your forever job, so you just keep trying, and don't forget to enjoy life when you can. Great. And that's it for me.
Thank you so much, Helen, for a great talk. And as a reminder, we'll be taking questions for both talks after our next speaker. So feel free to start putting your questions into the Q&A box at any time. So I'd like to welcome our second speaker, Ryan Mitchell, as the Director of Business Development for Satellos Bioscience, Inc., which is a Canadian biotech company focused on degenerative muscle diseases. And prior to joining Satellos, Ryan worked in consulting for a bit and then completed his grad work at McMaster, which I'm sure he'll talk about more. So please take it away, Ryan.
Thanks, Ellie. And thank you, Stem Cell Network and MBD, for inviting me. And thank you to everyone for joining. Bring up my presentation now. And also thank you to Helen for kicking that off and giving such a great intro. And I think there'll be some parallels and some good contrast between our two talks. So as Ellie indicated, I did start off doing a quasi consulting position, and as I'll get to in the slides coming, I found out that that wasn't for me at the time, although I thought that was going to be my sort of forever career, and I ended up finding something that I fell in love with, and now could think of actually going back to consulting after having got some additional experience. So as Ellie said, I'm the Director of Business Development for Satellos Bioscience, which is a Canadian startup company in the biotech space. We're traded on the TSXV. You can find us there. I myself have a Bachelor of Science from McMaster University, as well as a PhD, and I did a short postdoc there. So one thing I also wanted to point out is, unlike Helen, I did a very poor job of engaging outside of the lab during my grad work. Although despite that, I still managed to find my way through and get into a position which I very much like. But I wanted to echo Helen's comments that getting engaged outside of the lab is critical as soon as you can, especially networking events. Communication is so massive in all jobs, but especially in consulting as well as business development. So the more opportunities you can give yourself to simply get out and chat with people about what you do, chat with scientists, chat with non-scientists, engage with the community as best you can, because this is what you will inevitably be doing for the rest of your life. And it's a skill set that will be applied everywhere. So I did my grad work at Mac with Mickey Badia. I then did a short postdoc with Mick, and the purpose of that postdoc was actually to try and spin out some technology that had been developed in the lab. And that's what really started me down the path of biotechnology. During that process, I came across a group that was on campus trying to facilitate the creation of companies called Bloom Burton. They're an investment bank located here in Toronto that is really focused on the healthcare space. They were working with McMaster as a mandate, part of a consulting mandate, to try and help Mac spin out companies. And it was through that process that I identified how I may have liked being on the other side of that equation, being the Bloom-Burton folks instead of being the young, budding, or at least attempting to bud entrepreneur. And I became enamored with this process of really evaluating technology. And so I simply asked the question, how did you folks get to where you are? How did you get on that side of the equation? And so that started the process of interviewing for a consulting position at Bloom-Burton. I managed to get in. I was there for about 6 months before a project came across my desk, which was the creation of Satellos Bioscience, along with Michael Rudnicki and SCNPI, who I'm sure many of you are familiar with. And it was at that time that I determined I felt that I may find it more rewarding to sort of, go back to my roots of a PhD student and stick with a more singular focus for a period of time rather than this other model of taking on new projects monthly or weekly in the consulting focus. And so I managed to convince both Bloom-Burton as well as Satellos to let me join their company in a similar capacity at first, starting off as a strategy analyst, which is really consulting on what the company was doing at the time and what they may do in the future. And that has effectively progressed over the last about 5 years now into more senior positions in business development. So what is business development? What is this position? And really, what are the types of criteria that lead you there or that come across once you are there? So a lot of people in business development in the biotech or pharma space, at least maybe a bias towards the newer generation of folks, many of them do have a scientific training, a master's or a PhD. Some have a BSc, and many also have an MBA. And there are also still individuals who simply have an MBA and don't have any sort of formal scientific training. But usually you'll find that this is a mixed position of both scientific and business, hard skills and soft skills. Salary range here, this is a hard one and a difficult question. This is just a figure from Google. I literally Googled Canadian Director of Business Development salaries. This is going to change company to company, location to location, but you can be expected to be, rewarded for this position. What I do in a sentence. So business development is a very fluid position. This for me was also a difficult question to answer, like it was, as Helen was saying, but effectively, the ultimate goal is to create, foster, maintain relationships with new and existing stakeholders. So what the heck does that mean? So basically, I get to tell folks what our company does. And that probably seems simple, and sometimes it is. And the reason you do that in a biotech company, is many. One, you're often seeking financing. Biotechs will live and breathe by their ability to bring in new financing in order to fund the science and the development that they're doing. And you need to be able to communicate what it is your company is doing in order to convince investors to give you money. Also, startup biotechs, we are a young and emerging company, will often be talking to more senior biotech companies for the potential for future relationships, future co-developments. Again, individuals need to be present that can speak at a high level about the science to other members of other organizations. So really what this position is a communication position. I get to tell all sorts of different people what it is that Satellos is doing. And sometimes I get to describe that in very deep scientific detail. Other times I'm describing that to lay audiences, but effectively this is a communication position in order to try and establish relationships, be that for current or future research and development. Maybe I'm speaking with, contract research organizations. I'm speaking with academics that maybe have interesting science that we would like to engage or get help from them on, or I'm speaking to investors. No matter what, I'm always trying to best communicate what it is our company is trying to do. So in order to achieve that, key skills are really communication focused again. Often people talk about being able to communicate an idea and speak clearly and get things across in a simple yet informative manner. One thing that I don't think is focused on enough is actually listening. You need to be an incredible listener so that you can interpret exactly what it is the folks you're speaking to either want from you or what they've understood from you. And the latter may be far more important, as often in biotech or pharma, and especially in the startup space, meetings with these different stakeholders, be they other pharmas or biotechs, or be they potential investors, are often short. You may only have 10, 15, 20 minutes, perhaps an elevator ride, to get across why it is these folks should be spending time with you and spending their millions of dollars on what you're doing. And so listening to whether they've actually understood what you've told them can be just as important as delivering the message itself. And of course, this really spans across being able to speak to scientists about science, but also being able to speak to non-scientists about science. And so as trainees of science, we can all take that message in and say, well, of course, that makes sense. But putting it into practice can sometimes be difficult. And so that really gets back to this idea that, please get out and network as much as possible, and don't just go to the science networking events. Try to get yourself into broader areas, speak to your non-science friends or families, and throw yourself into a situation that you may not feel entirely comfortable with, and get out there and start talking to people. Other careers I considered, so I kind of already alluded to this. I thought that I wanted to go into consulting. I found a route to do that through Bloom Burton. I enjoyed the idea of taking on, constant influx of new ideas and new projects, but I just found that, my brain constantly wanted to meander, going to taking a project from start to finish. And so I found that sticking with sort of one theme of ideas may be better for me, but that may not be better for you. So it is going to be trial and error, as Helen already indicated. Typical activities, so the types of things that I do day to day. A lot of it, as Helen already indicated, is PowerPoint. So if you're not already proficient with PowerPoint, you will be. We are constantly delivering investor presentations. So this is really pitching the company, the ideas in the company, trying to garner, future financing in order to fund our way through. This then becomes slightly different, but somewhat the same when we are talking to potential partners. So an investor pitch will inevitably be different from a partnering pitch. One, you're asking for money directly, and the other, sometimes you're pitching a project. This is where you can really get into some, scientific detail, or talking about the strengths of the other company that you're trying to work with. But again, it's a PowerPoint presentation, and it's all about communicating ideas clearly and then listening to that feedback. Because we're a startup, I wouldn't say that I'm the typical, business development person. I do wear many hats in the company, which I like. So I still get to participate in sort of more operational activities within our company. So I get to see all of our fresh data. I get to analyze it. I get to interpret it. I speak with our scientific team constantly. I help to manage our outside relationships with other research and development teams and contract research organizations that we work with. So this really is sort of a hybrid position. And you'll find that if you end up going the startup route, almost everybody has a hybrid position where we're all trying to achieve everything that needs to be done for the company. And some of you will find that a very rewarding and interesting process. And for some of you, you may want more structure and a little bit more rigidity, stay in that one particular lane. And so again, this is something that you'll have to sort of think about as you move forward in your career. For those of you that don't like grant writing in academia, unfortunately, it will still continue in industry. Grant writing becomes, something where this is potentially very beneficial for an industry company, where you can get what's called non-dilutive financing, so money that comes into the company but doesn't necessarily dilute the individuals who already own it. But grant writing remains important if you are in a scientific or life science-based biotech. Another interesting part of my job is really keeping a pulse on what other folks are doing in the field and in our space in general, in terms of identifying additional technologies that could be, that could fit well with what our company is doing. So this is really looking at what we call licensing opportunities. So another academic lab or another company may be developing or already have a technology that could be suited quite well with Satellos. And so I get to speak to those academics or speak to those companies about whether they're interested in partnering those assets and technologies, or doing co-development projects. So again, keeping my hands sort of in the science, getting to learn about new and emerging things, and then also mixing that with developing deal structure or licensing agreements, which is a little bit more on the business side of the equation. And then of course, keeping an eye on the competition. and intelligence gathering. And this is, not for nefarious reasons. This is simply to be always informed of what everyone else is doing, especially in our disease space, which is in rare disease. So we like to be kept informed of what everyone is doing, because we think that, almost all treatments for our particular area will be useful and helpful. And so we want to see if we can work in concert with other companies rather than looking at this from a product competitive intelligence point of view. Okay, so why is my role important? Well, I think I've kind of described that. Business development is speaking about the company to try and foster relationships to either finance the company or to effectively communicate what your company is trying to do to stakeholders. So, we're developing a drug. It is important to be able to communicate this to advocacy groups, to patients, to physicians, and to the folks in the community that this is potentially a treatment that is coming down the road, and everyone should be informed of its potential capability, as well as ensuring that this project can go forward from a financial perspective. So Satellos will live or die based on its ability to finance itself and based on its ability to progress its research. And so that is effectively all garnered through communication. Why do I enjoy this role? For me, it really is the perfect balance. I still get to be involved in science, and I get to tell people about it. I love talking about science. I loved talking about my own science. In fact, I didn't do it enough. Admittedly, when I was in grad school, I didn't take enough opportunities to go out and speak about my research. And so being in this role now, I get to speak about Satellos science all the time, and I absolutely adore it. So I encourage all of you to take as many opportunities as you can. Don't feel as though your committee meetings are punishment. Take them as opportunities to speak about what it is you're doing and get that across in a clear and coherent way so that people understand why it's important, because again, this skill set will be useful throughout life. Challenges. So these challenges are challenges that I would say I enjoy, and that is getting across, very complicated science to non-scientific audiences. For me, there is nothing more rewarding than looking and watching that aha moment on people's faces when they actually understand what it is you're trying to do, and they can see just how important and critical it could be in terms of impacting patients. So that for me is really the fun part. It can be a challenge. It has been a challenge with Satellos in the past, and where we've really, continued to adapt our messaging and how we explain a lot of Dr. Michael Rudnicki's, complicated but important science to the community. And we think we've made great progress on that, and we're very excited for the future. The future career trajectory and opportunities. So this is really, this is aspirational. These are my own personal thoughts. I wouldn't say there's a rigid trajectory for somebody who's in business development. If you're in business development and you have a scientific background, I would say that you could move laterally anywhere inside of a company. You can really shift over to more operational roles. You could go back to science if you wanted to, and you could exit science if you wanted to. So in terms of the way that I'm thinking now, after being in this particular startup for 5 years, I have found that I do love the BD role, but I would hope that in future opportunities, I can go and shift towards more of an operational role. I really do like still having, my finger on the pulse of the science and getting to, help make those decisions as to where the company should move next in terms of its R&D program. And so that's something of a personal interest to me. And I think that that's an optional route. And then the ultimate focus, if you do have that sort of entrepreneurial spirit, is I would, love one day to link up with colleagues that I have still doing science today, and be the CEO of my own startup, working alongside them, trying to develop Canadian technology. So I feel like a lot of folks who, once they dip their toe into the startup waters, it's hard to get out. It's intoxicating. It's very, very fun. But there's a lot to be said about larger corporate track as well. Ellie, am I okay for time?
Yeah, we have a few good questions already, so maybe just another minute or two, and then we'll.
Okay, great. Yep, this is the end. So in terms of advice, this is going to be a little bit more fluid for me. I would revert to Helen's slide. It was fantastic. It had lots of great advice that I think could be used, across multiple careers. But this is really from the perspective of the startup space, which is a bit more fluid. So really, if you think you're interested in biotech startup, or you think you're interested in early biotech, track the space, get to know it. look at every company you can and try to find out, what really perks your interest. Reach out to these people, let them know if you're on the job market. You never know who is going to respond. You never know who needs an entry-level person that's either in the strategy space or the BD space. It may seem odd, but it does happen. And in fact, this is exactly how I fell into my position. And so it's not unheard of. And I just saw an individual I know posted on LinkedIn literally, 20 minutes ago, looking for a junior person that can help out with, BD and early business development. So these positions are out there. Attend networking events. We've been through this. Engage your tech transfer office, volunteer there, intern there. There may even be part-time positions there. You can learn about technology transfer from an academic perspective. This will also give you a heads up of all the startups that are sort of ongoing or emerging at your university, which could also be a way for you to get in. Do a little bit of legwork on your own and identify your local biotech ecosystem. Google is your friend. Literally Googling biotech with your city or your province or where you are. There's likely a provincial sort of biotech group that will have all of this information in one place, and you should quite quickly be able to map out almost all the biotech or small pharma in your area, in our country, very, very easily. And there's usually points of contact there that you can get in touch with. And Helen already mentioned this as well. Make a LinkedIn profile. I was in school right around the time social media kind of burst on the scene, and I myself am a terrible social media user. I often do not do enough. I think this is actually very important, but LinkedIn is great. This is where you will see a ton of opportunities. So please take that profile seriously. I'm sure many of you already do, and you think I'm crazy for saying that. But for those of you still holding off on really dipping your toe into that aspect of social media, it is worth it. So do it. Final advice, I would say that if you are thinking biotech, the big question is, startup or large corporation. We are kind of limited here in Canada in terms of large corporation, although I hope that is changing. Don't be afraid of going south of the border. There's lots of opportunities there as well. And then Canadian companies will be frothing to hire you back after you've had some experience at some of these larger places. The one thing I will say to think about is startup biotech is a bit more free flowing. Your days may not be as structured, your role may not be as structured. You'll have to do a lot more thinking on your feet, a lot more pivoting, a lot more sort of creative thinking as to how you can best contribute to the company. But everyone is on that team together, and it's usually a small team. Everyone's fighting for the same goal. Large corporations, you will find more structure there. You will find, a list of things that you're responsible to do on that day. However, you may be confined to your list. You may not even be eligible to think outside of that list. And so these two, roles are different, but, I do love a little structure. Maybe I even want a little bit more. So it's really a personal choice. And then final thing, my shameless plug, if you're interested more in Satellos, please visit our website.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan, for a great talk. And on behalf of Stem Cell Network and Medicine by Design, I'd like to thank both Helen and Ryan again for being here today and sharing their career paths.